All right. Well, welcome everybody who's listening and or watching. I'm still trying to figure out how to get the Crowdcast plugin into this event. So anyway, we'll fiddle with it. But in the meantime, welcome and thanks for watching, listening. Oh, here we go. So
question should show up in the group chat on the side. Is that the idea?
Yeah. I'm trying to. Well, that's not helpful. Anyway, sorry, I'll quit fiddling with this, trying to get it to install. Anyway, on the Crowdcast page, the question's there. And it is huge time zone differences. Just started working with a client who's 12 hours ahead. Would love to hear if Reuven has any horror stories or tips on this, especially in regards to balancing availability between local clients and global communication delays, setting any expectations. Well, Reuven's not here, so have you dealt with this much? People who are significantly off from you time zone wise?
Yes, in a couple of cases, and the two different cases are trying to set up coaching with people who are in New Zealand, which is it's a 12 or 14 hours difference from where I am in the U.S., and it actually basically it's kind of a deal breaker for me. The person who was interested in doing it was okay with doing late night. On their end, it was like, if we did 11 in the morning here, it was like 1 a.m. there. But it really made it complicated to rearrange the schedule and that sort of thing. So I know it's not the kind of relationship that the person who asked the question is probably talking about. But the other type of situation I've had is working with external dev shops. So when I'm doing acting CTO type of consulting, retainer consulting for a customer who's got a bunch of ongoing software projects, a lot of times those are outsourced and I'm managing the external developers. And so we've had developers in London and Croatia and the customers in Cayman Islands and Miami and other developers in Colorado. So the time zones are just all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to really handle it is to, like the person asked, about setting expectations, that everybody just is religious about using an asynchronous project management system or communications channel. So in my case, it was always Basecamp, where people could log questions and that sort of thing in Basecamp. And you just really rarely have a chance to have, there's like so little overlap to have an actual synchronous phone call, that what we would do when we really needed to do that is we would fly there. So we would pretty much once a month, with that particular case, we would fly, have like a full day of meetings, maybe 2 days of meetings, depending on how intense the development schedule was. And especially when we were coming up to a big deadline, we'd get there and we'd just answer as many questions as we could and hash through as much of that stuff all in person as we could. And it kind of forces everyone, it's kind of cool because it gets everybody into the same time zone. And so you can have like an 8-hour meeting,
Mm-hmm.
Even if we said, oh, let's block out a day to do this, if we're all in our respective time zones, that day is going to hit our life at a very weird spot. And people would be so distracted and trying to juggle family stuff and all that, that worked for us. It's obviously a huge pain to fly to a location once a month to deal with that, because you get jet lag and everything else. But it did work. It was very effective. You could get so much stuff done in those meetings that it would sort of, it would cover you for a month, and you
Mm-hmm.
could take care of everything else in Basecamp or Slack or whatever you use.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of experience with this too. I've worked for clients in Hong Kong, and I've worked for clients in Germany, and as a full-time employee, I actually worked with a team in India, and that was as part of a larger corporation, and they had a team there that we just had to interface with. I'll start with the least recent and work my way up. So with the full-time job, I mean, we would either show up at 6:30 in the morning, or we would show up at, or we would stay after till 6 or 7 at night, because they were 12 and a half hours difference between Utah and India. And I'm not completely sure why that's a half hour on there, but whatever. So we would just do that, and then the nice thing about it was that we could say, okay, you guys need to do this stuff for us, and then we'd come back the next morning and it would be done. So there is that, but the flip side was that we were handing down requirements more often than we were getting them, and so it's a little bit different. The client that I worked for from Hong Kong, he just made sure that his times accommodated mine. And so it really didn't throw things off too much for me. I think he had a full-time job at the time anyway. And so it was actually more convenient for him to just get on. I don't remember if it was early morning or late in the evening for him, but he would just get on and make it happen. And then the rest of the communication happened through a system like Basecamp, like Jonathan said. And then the last one in Germany, most of they actually had several contractors here in the United States, but yeah, we occasionally had to hop on calls and things at weird times, and it's just the way that it was. As long as it's not too often and too out of sync for me, a lot of times it doesn't, it's not a big deal. Okay, I have to get on a call at 7 instead of at 8 or 9, which is convenient for me. My kids are already up and going to school, so getting on at 7 just means that my wife has to do a little bit more in the morning. But yeah, it really just depends on your client. I have heard of people who, routinely work with groups of people who are, a significant number of hours off from them. And yeah, you just have to accommodate them by working those weird times where it's either right before or right after. And then just make it work.
Yeah, I had a friend who was a lawyer that worked with people in, I think it was Prague, and it was far enough ahead that if he often had to like leave a social engagement where he couldn't actually, have a few martinis or whatever, and he'd be like, "Oh, yeah, just water for me. I have to go have a call," and he was sort of a high-powered lawyer type guy. So it's like you said, it's okay if it's once in a while, I think, but if you can avoid baking that into your schedule, it's probably good for your from the standpoint of like long-term burnout, because it starts to pull you. It's like working third shift almost, which I've done in the past. And it just wears you down. It turns you into it separates you from the rest of society, which is not a good thing to have to do for a long period of time, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the other thing is I mean, what we're talking about here is the same problem I think we talk about probably half the time, and that's communication. And so what it boils down to is the communication time that you spend, or the time you spend communicating through a project management system where you can have a time delay on it, or Slack where, again, you can have a time delay on it sometimes, or whether or not you're getting clear enough communication to where you actually have to do the call, and then when that call actually has to occur. And so as much as you can, if you can put systems in place to help people give you the right information the first time, or to where you can get clarification without having to make that call at a weird time and without getting held up because you don't know what you're supposed to be doing next, and it's going to take 8 hours for them to reply. So you just have to be hyper vigilant on your communication. And, I think you can avoid a lot of this. Holly, the person who asked it, actually said, "Thanks, guys. It sounds like I have to get them into a project management system." And I would say absolutely yes.
I've got one last tip on the communication angle, which is I find myself in the past, especially when I was doing more development, I would find that I was more productive after everybody had gone to bed, since I work from home.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those types of tasks take some deep focus, maybe 4 hours of really digging into a problem and, working your way through it, testing it, debugging it, at least first pass of debugging. And, could be some pretty complicated front-end JavaScript stuff that I have to test across 6 devices and a bunch of different browsers on each one. And what I would do once I got it nailed down, obviously nobody's awake, right? Probably nobody else on the team's awake. And while it was still fresh in my mind, what I would do is record a screencast of me walking through the thing that I had just finished, just completed, how it was supposed to work, how I thought it was supposed to work, what the expectations are of it working properly are. So then the people who were going to test it the next day, so either the client or the client's test people, they would at least know, they would know what I saw. And so there wouldn't be this, them logging a bunch of bugs and me saying, no, that's expected behavior. So you could really, I could do that one screencast, and it's so easy. They take like maybe 5 minutes. Even if you did 4 hours of work, the screencast will take you 5 minutes max. And I just use ScreenFlow, turn it on, press record. I just walk through the changes that I made. Sometimes I'll find a bug then because I'm thoroughly walking through it and be like, fix the bug, go back, record a new screencast. Then I'm sure that they know what I think it's supposed to do. So if there's some miscommunication on the scope or something like that, it'll be revealed right then. And the other thing they can do is once they have that video, they can share it around with a bunch of other people. So it's kind of like a design review call that nobody has to jump on. And it's very easily shareable and other people can use it. And it's a real, I'm surprised I don't see more people doing this. It's really great when you've got that sort of, either if you're working weird hours or if the people that you're working with are in a different time zone. It's super helpful. It cuts to the chase.
Yep. If you don't want to spring for ScreenFlow, I think it's $100 or something. There is a really cheap version called Jing.com. I think it's free. I'm not sure. If it's not free, it's really cheap. But it's for really quick screencasts. So we're talking like 5, maybe 10 minutes. But usually that's enough to at least demo the core of whatever you're working on. And that's a super way to go, just to make that communication, I guess the word I'm looking for is just make it as clear as possible, as unambiguous as possible, because they can actually see what you see.
Totally unambiguous. Unambiguous.
Yep. But yeah, and then just the other thing that I've done in the past is I've actually sent emails like every day that I've gotten work done, and not necessarily recorded a screencast, but just said, hey, here's the list of the things I got done, and that way they have some idea of the progress that's being made. And then we don't have to do a big long call to check in. They can just fire back with whatever they're concerned about.
Yeah, another cool thing is if you're storing your stuff in GitHub, you can have your commit messages pushed straight to Basecamp. So if you are aware of that, you can use really clear commit messages, and people can see immediately that, oh, this thing was done, this thing was done, this thing was done. That's nice too.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and done answering that one. It doesn't look like we have any other questions being asked. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've got going on lately, Jonathan?
Sure. Yeah, I just got back from Double Your Freelancing Conference, which was in Norfolk, Virginia. It was organized by Brennan Dunn of Double Your Everything fame.
Mm-hmm.
And, so obviously he's probably pretty well known in the freelancer community. And it was an excellent conference. It looks like they're going to do it again next year. It was a big success, so people should keep their eyes peeled for that. They're releasing videos of it, so you can check it out. So anything that I talk about here, you'll be able to find out about later. But it was amazing. It was probably my sort of takeaway from it was, I think in 10 years I'll look back on that conference and say that was a turning point, because it was I've probably done 100 conferences, but usually it's for web developers and web designers, and they're people that have convinced their boss to send them to this conference, and everybody's there and they're talking about skills. So usually when I make a presentation, it's about how to do this or how to do that, how to make an iOS app with PhoneGap, or how to use JavaScript to further your career. No, not even. It's like how to use JavaScript to make a responsive website, things like that. But this one was a bunch of people who spent their own money on plane tickets and hotels and conference tickets to sit around with some people who were sort of a little bit farther down the road than they were, and talk about making their business better. And there were I talked to, of course, I talked to software developers, web designers, photographers, ghostwriters, copywriters, people who,
Wow.
yeah, translate German to English. I mean, just a really wide range of types of freelancers. And the vibe was so much different than a typical, you know, like web developer conference, like, web directors. I love all those guys there, like, but it was just such a different feel. It was people who were there. They weren't thinking about skills. They were thinking about their mindset, really. They were thinking about their
Hmm.
business, not how to do their job, but how to make their business better. And it was really wild. And there were a lot of the reactions that I saw on Twitter and from people that I met in person were it was all about them changing their mindset. So the talks that really resonated with people were not the how to do the how to automate your sales funnel. Let's say Kurt Elster did a great talk on how to do that, and Moishka Marsh did a great talk on how to use social media without being a jerk, and that's all super important information. But the stuff that really clicked, it seemed to click with the audience was just to change the way you think about your business
Hmm.
and stop thinking of yourself as a pair of hands that does what they're told, and start thinking of yourself as an expert, which a lot of people have a hard time saying, yes, I'm an expert on this. And I can understand that. Maybe you're not the worldwide expert on soap making or whatever your deal is, but you probably know a lot more than a ton of people. In fact, you probably know a lot more about it than 90% of the people on the planet, even if you know just a couple things. So, okay, maybe the word expert is strong, but you need to think of yourself as having valuable information that you not only can share with your audience, but almost have an obligation to share. If you do something like, I don't know, what's an example? You integrate Stripe with Gravity Forms, and
Hmm.
people struggle with this all the time. And you've got this solution that is super affordable, super plug and play. And if people just knew about it, they could stop all this suffering that they're going through, spending tons of money by, trying to find a custom developer, et cetera, et cetera. So you have this value to offer to people who are experiencing a specific pain. You kind of owe it to them to let them know about it. And so it's kind of like flips the script on sales. It's like, no, I'm not trying to like, stick my foot in your door and butt into your house like I'm selling you a vacuum cleaner that you don't need. If somebody has a problem that you solve in a really affordable way, you know, it's not sales in that gross way. It's more like thinking about your business in a different way and thinking about the value that you offer and finding the people who stand to benefit from it the most. And then you can use it once that clicks with you, then you're going to need all of the other techniques.
Hmm.
You're going to want to automate your sales funnel. You're going to want to know how to use Twitter without annoying people, and all of that other stuff. It's all important. But if you don't do that first thing, which is change your mindset, the rest of the stuff is not going to work.
Yeah, I really love the thoughts about seeing that what you have has value. And so instead of thinking about how do I get somebody to pay me,
Right.
what you're thinking about is how do I change the way that they do their business so that it saves them thousands of dollars. And the side note is I get paid somewhat less than that thousands of dollars. So it makes or saves them $5,000 and I make $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously then what you're offering is an immense value. It's not just hey, you can pay me to do this work.
Right.
and
Yeah.
and yeah, there are a bunch of other mindsets like that. And I don't think they get explicitly called out at microconf, because I went to microconf in
Mm-hmm.
May, one of those. And there was a lot of tactical stuff that it sounds like there really wasn't a ton of at Double Your Freelancing, but at the same time it all stemmed from that mindset stuff. And if you were watching, I mean, that's really what they were telling you was think about it this way, and then you're going to go find that you have these tactical needs that will enable you to work better and smarter and serve your customers better because you're thinking about it better.
Exactly. Yeah, you need it all, but you
Yeah.
can't put the cart before the horse. And unfortunately, I think the mindset one for a lot of people is basically, I see, I had two kinds of reactions. One were, people like, you just blew my mind. And like those people got it. Like all of a
Yeah.
sudden it clicked and they'll never be able to see their business the old way again. Like I ruined it.
Uh-huh.
They're the new way. They switched to the new way. And then there were people who were like, but how do I, and they're sort of focused on, they're maybe a little bit nervous about, my talk was about the path to value-based fees, like how to stop doing hourly billing and start do value pricing. And a
Uh-huh.
lot of people get hung up on the specifics of it, and they can't let they can't let the switch flip in their brain until they understand the specifics. So it's almost, I don't know if it's like two different kinds of learners or people that are in different places in their business. Maybe some have more experience than others, but you can see that certain people, it just makes sense. And other people, it's like they need to be a little bit more explanation, and
Mhm.
maybe you have to come at it from the tactical stuff for them for the light to go on for them. It's wild, people just learn so differently.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that until you figure out how to get that light bulb to go on, it's going to be really hard for people to benefit from something like value pricing, because they end up doing fixed bids, and they place the bid too low, and then they get burned because the scope creeps all over the place because they never had a value conversation in the first place, et cetera, et cetera. It's like this snowball effect uh, that that really started at the very beginning of the relationship with the customer, where they kind of got off on the wrong foot, and they have a hard time closing deals, and people are trying to nickel and dime them, and haggle the quote and work them down, and it's wild. It I don't know.
Hmm.
I could. It's my head has just exploded from it. DOAF Conf was just. I mean, I connected with so many people. It was ridiculous. I'm like still drowning in emails from Friday. That I met probably 20 people that I could remember my name, and another 10 that I never got their name in the first place. And so just like emailing back and forth to follow up and connect them with other people, et cetera, et cetera. It was a really good conference.
That just sounds great. I'm going to ask a question since we don't have any questions for the Q&A, and that is, it sounds like in your case and in my case too with microconf, some of these realizations came because we kind of got away, we got to a conference, we met up with a bunch of people who were talking and thinking about this stuff, and that's where those connections were made. But I recognize that some freelancers may be struggling or may have other obligations that make it really hard for them to travel and to attend
Mhm.
conferences. So if that's not an option for them, is there a way for them to get these benefits without having to go to a conference like Double Your Freelancing Rate or MicroConf or one of these others?
Yeah, it is, it's expensive to go to. You've got the client work that you can't do while you're there, and
Mhm.
the flight and the hotel and the tickets, and yeah, it
Yep.
costs a lot of money. No doubt about it. But there are a bunch of other ways that aren't as good but are drastically less expensive or free. So if you let's say that in this case there are going to be videos after the fact. I think Brennan's selling them for $99 for 2 days
Mhm.
worth of videos. But there are plenty of other. So if you went to the conference page and you looked at the speakers, I don't know if this is true for everyone, but it's certainly true for me. You could just search on YouTube for other talks I've done, because there are videos, and it's going to be a mix of things. It's not all freelancer stuff,
Mhm.
but that is certainly one place where you can at least get the input. You can't ask questions, obviously, but you can get the input and get the data. Podcasts like this one or other, you could say, all right, just to use me as an example, you could just Google for Jonathan Stark podcast, and you're going to get like 20 podcasts, including
Mhm.
this one and others, where I've talked about the same sort of stuff that I talked about at this particular conference. And then you can try and engage with people. If they're too busy, they'll say no. Or if they, send somebody an email, tweet at them. If you just have a really quick question about something really specific, they'll probably answer. I probably answer. If somebody, but here's the thing: don't give me the whole backstory. If you're going to email me, don't write a book.
Hmm.
You don't have to be with me anyway. You don't have to just be like, polite intro sentence. Listen, I've got this one simple question for you. Just ask me the question. I don't want to hear your whole life story. Just ask me the question. I'll answer it. And if I need to ask you a follow-up question before I can answer it, I'll do that over email. But if I get an email that's like 1,000 words, I'm just going to delete it. I'm sorry. I'm not going to read it. Even if I archive it, I'm never going to come back to it. It's too much. So just send really, really brief, specific questions to people. And I almost guarantee they will answer you if you do it
I
like that.
I just want to jump in on that. I'm in the same place, in the same boat. I mean, I reply to pretty much everybody who emails me, but I will admit that, yeah, the ones where I get like a 10-page novella, what winds up happening is it'll stay in my inbox in the I really want to get back to this, and I'll never get back to it. And it's not because I don't want to answer, and it's not because I'm even filtering consciously my email. It's just, oh, I don't have time to read this. I'll get to it later. Oh, I don't have time to read this. I'll get to it later. And eventually later. And then it's like, oh, it's been 2 months. I'm a little embarrassed to answer this now. And then I archive it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, it's exactly it. You just start to feel bad, and then you're like, and then you're never going to answer it.
Yep.
So just ask one question. If you have a follow-up question, ask that one later. But a long one like that is not good. And plus, I know that a lot of the people, myself included, if you need something more in depth than that and something a little bit more real time, pretty much everybody offers some version of like paid phone calls. Um, and if they don't, you can just suggest that and be like,
Yep.
hey, could I give you, could I, pay to jump on a Skype call? It's not hard to do. Somebody just PayPal it. And if it's worth that much to you, it's a heck of a lot less expensive and time consuming than flying to a conference. And you get, direct one-on-one attention, which is cool too. I've done it in the past. I can remember setting up a phone call with Paul Boag when I was getting ready to start doing podcasting from Boag World, and I got on with Paul and Marcus and talked about this and that, and it was great, and it established a relationship. We ended up meeting at a conference where we were both speaking, and they ended up having me on the show a couple times. So it's not a bad way to start a relationship either. It's there's tons of value there.
Well, and I was going to say that that's a good substitute for because there are two parts of the conference, right? There are the talks, and
Yeah.
a lot of times you can either go and watch them online or pay for access to them in the case of double your freelancing rate. But there's the social aspect too. And in a lot of cases, yeah, exactly what you're saying, where you can pay somebody for their time. Or sometimes people just, it's like, hey, I got a couple of questions and I was wondering if you could do a 10-minute call or 15-minute call. Some people do that. The other thing is go find the Slack channels that have all these people in them. I can tell you that there's a Slack channel that I'm in that Jonathan and Eric are both in, and I think we all joined it independent of each other, more or less. And it's got a whole bunch of other people who are kind of in the situation that we're in with our businesses, running our businesses and interacting. So those are out there. Email lists, same kind of thing. Get involved. Be yourself. Get to know people. Have those conversations. I think that can open up some possibilities in your mind. And then if you find a group of people that you can get together with on a regular basis as a mastermind group, I can't tell you how helpful that's been for me. Yeah, in having a mastermind group. But find these places where the people who are having these conversations go to socialize and get in there and then have the conversations. You can start them. You can get in to, for example, the water cooler chat that Jonathan and I are both in on Slack. You can get in there and ask questions and, well, what about this? And I saw this and I'm thinking about this. Those start really fascinating conversations. And if anything, people are going to be grateful that you chimed in. So
yeah, there's usually, it seems, especially in that one, it's almost like every single person has one amazing area of expertise or experience. Like there's one guy who has a podcast that's in the top 20 on iTunes.
Yep.
There's another guy who's made, I'm going to say $1 million selling classes online. And it's just, the list goes on. Everybody in there has some really unique expertise. It's endless. In fact, there's so many people in there that are like that I can barely even keep track of it.
Yep.
So masterminds are huge. I don't think you mentioned Facebook groups, but that's been another really good one for me. And a lot of them are public or are just really easy to get into. You can find them really easily and just request an invite and boom, you're in. And meetups in your local area. If there's a meetup in your area that that seems like good for that, then go for it. And if not, start one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing is that, I mean, I have a meetup now that I do every Thursday. I've talked about it before, where we just get together and do co-working. And so we're all just working on different stuff, but we're all kind of there hanging together on Thursdays. But I actually met one or two people just going to the cafe, and I'd see them because the place that I go, there are like 3 booths down this hallway back to the kitchen and bathrooms, and they're a little quieter, they're a little more private. You don't have as many people walking around you, and so the people who go there to work wind up sitting back there because it's just a nicer area to be in. And so you see the same person the last 3 times you've gone there. So it's like, so, hey, I've seen you here a few times. What are you working on? And, you meet some really fascinating people that way. If you're also looking for some business advice, then here in Salt Lake, there are 2 startup incubators. And they actually have meetups when they're trying to recruit their next cohort. And so they'll have entrepreneurs from the local area come and speak about some aspect of running a business or starting a product or whatever. And so a lot of those are great. And then afterward, I mean, they just stick around for as long as they want for networking. And what they're hoping is that you as the business person, or you as the technical person, because one of them is a technology startup incubator, will get together and go after an idea and submit your idea to the startup incubator. But you can totally meet other people who are like you there and start having the conversations that we're talking about here and kind of level up where you're at, just because you're in a place where people tend to have those conversations and be thinking about those things, even if you're not going to directly participate in the startup incubator.
Yes, even we in tiny Providence, Rhode Island have a startup incubator. So
Woo-wee!
Yeah, we're big time.
All right. Well, I'll talk a little bit about what I've been doing. My focus lately has been on Angular Remote Conf. It's actually going to be this Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I also just launched the website for the Rails Remote Conf. I'm thinking about doing one for freelancers. I'm kind of tempted to actually see if Brennan would be interested in teaming up on that, and then just doing like a Double Your Freelancing Summit that's an online summit, but I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, so that's what I've been doing. And then I just picked up a retainer client, and I'm not super thrilled about it at this point because it's hourly, and they don't seem to quite completely know what they want. And then I've picked up another client, and I'm having the value conversation with them as well. But they're actually talking to their audience and things like that, and so they're kind of in flux right now as well. But yeah, I've got a few things going on, and then I took over a project for another friend of mine, and I'm having that conversation with them as well, that value conversation. What does this mean to you and stuff? But their product's already built, and at this point, we're talking about solutions that will make them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I'm starting to figure out, okay, well, I can do that for this amount, and then you can make 10 times that, and everybody's happy. So but yeah, it's really interesting to just all the things going on. I also just renewed sponsorships for the shows. If you know anyone who wants to sponsor this show, I would appreciate the referral. And I'm actually kind of having that conversation with myself, as far as I've been reading the book Essentialism. And anyway, so I've been looking at what I've been doing, and this show actually just barely breaks even. I know there are some products I could probably make for the audience here that would make money or do that summit or something like that. And then the other show that I have, iFreaks, actually doesn't even break even. And so I've been looking at that and thinking about, whether or not I should continue to produce the shows. Now, I don't think these shows are going to go anywhere because I enjoy doing them, but it is something that I've been thinking about. And I've been looking at the other things that I do and deciding, what to cut. So it's been really, really interesting just to, okay, so what are my options? What would it have to do in order for it to be a slam dunk to keep? And then I start, chasing things down. So I am talking to a few sponsors at this point that, may make it worth it monetarily. But then I'm also looking at my time and what I'm spending my time on. And okay, how do I justify the time, or is it worth my time? Anyway, so lots of things that I'm thinking about there. And I think back to the conversation of just changing your mindset. I think reading books is another way that you can get information that makes you at least consider where you're going and what you're doing.
Absolutely. I just add one thing though, is try to get recommendations from people you trust, because I have found that not all books are good. And
That's true.
sometimes they can, not all the time, but occasionally they can confuse you more than not. So if you're reading a book, there's this sort of thing where, as the author of several books, where I know that the reader imbues the author with this sort of like expert guru, worldwide guru status on, the person who wrote the book on X. And it does not mean that they're 100% right, or they're talking exactly about your situation, or that there isn't something about your situation that invalidates the information. So when you're reading a book, go into it with an open mind, but not too open. So some things, like some of my business books that I just consider Bibles of solo consulting, like Value-Based Fees by Ellen Weiss. The thing, I read it, like I've read it a million times. I read it every year. And every year I get more out of it. But there's some things in there that do not work for me. And it took me a while to be like, you know what, this thing that I'm trying to implement is just not working for me. Maybe I'm not there yet, or whatever it is. But there's something, I mean, this is probably my favorite book, like my number one book that, if that hadn't been written, it would have had a huge negative impact on my life, or if I hadn't found it. But still, there's stuff in there that just does not work for me. So I sort of pick and choosing the things that work for me. And it's 90% of that book is just like directly applicable to my business. But I'm a software developer basically, and he's a management consultant. And, I deal with a certain type of business up to a certain level, and he's on a different playing field. So there were certain things that I think work for him in his environment that just did not translate whatsoever to my world.
Yep.
So just, keep an open mind, but also don't blindly accept everything that you read.
Yeah, really, for me, the books that I read, yeah, they're there to kind of start that conversation in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's, okay, these are kind of the principles that have been laid out, or these are the practices that they're advocating. And I have no problem trying out a particular practice for a few weeks or a few months if I, if I see that the merits have been explained well. But yeah, you want to glean these ideas and then figure out which ones apply to your situation.
Yes. So if you know someone who kind of does the same thing you do, and you are under the impression that they've leveled up from where you are, ask them which books they should read.
Yep.
And presumably they'll say, yeah, I've read a ton of books on this. These three were just like hands down the best ones to read for somebody in your shoes.
Yeah. The other thing is that, so I've one of the mastermind groups I'm in is actually run by a guy named Aaron Walker, and he's a millionaire. He lives out in Nashville, extremely successful. He's in a mastermind with Dave Ramsey. Lots of things going for him. And so when it comes down to business, he has a lot of great ideas. And so a lot of the recommendations that he gives are things that have benefited me directly. And so finding a mentor, finding somebody to pay attention to, really works out. But yeah, some of the things he's told me to try, I've tried, and they just don't work for my market, or they don't work as well as they worked for his market. Mm-hmm. And so there are definite things there as far as, the ability or payoff. But I mean, everything he's told me, with very few exceptions, has paid off. And so when he recommends a book about business or about life or about some of these different ideas, I take it on, and so he recommended the Essentialism. That's why I'm reading it. Cool. And things like that. But yeah, I've talked to other freelancers and gotten recommendations for other books. And typically, unless it comes from somebody that I just, I almost trust implicitly, I have to hear a recommendation for a book like 2, 3, 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, I keep hearing about this from the people who are, in the situation I'm in and seem to be, like Jonathan said, moving up.
Mm-hmm.
So, this must be a part of what's making the difference. But for one person, a lot of times it's just, it may have blown their mind, but, in some cases I've read those books and they just haven't worked out as, great sources of information for me. So I usually wait till I've heard about it 2 or 3 times.
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes you're not in the right place to read the book. You might not be ready for it, or you might be past the point. Another thing that's happened to me, because in coaching, I have this reading list that I say everybody you start at the top of this list and keep reading until you get to the bottom. And that was sort of when I first started out doing that, it was a little bit naive because people would come back with questions and I'll be like, oh, wow. I should have really told them why I want them to read a particular book, because there are certain ones, for example, The Brain Audit by Sean D'Souza, great book for writing sales pages. Sean, if you're listening, I love you. But a lot of people have complained that the book is, it's got a choppy writing style. He does it on purpose, but it's a turnoff to some people. And I say to them, just don't worry about that. Yeah, it's a strangely written book, but the information, if you can just look past that, it's almost like, listening to somebody that has a strange speech pattern, but that person still can say something that rocks your world. So I'd be like, don't get caught up in the way he writes it. It's like a million headlines with, 1-sentence paragraphs broken out. And, but just look past that and just listen to what he's saying. Listen to what's underneath it, and do not mess with the formula. So there's other books where I'll say, do this, pick and choose. This particular book, it's like, don't mess with the formula. It's not for everything. It's for writing sales pages. And having that little bit of background that it would have taken me 30 seconds to write down, will totally change the way the person takes the book in. What's another one? There's just plenty of them, like value-based fees. Like I said before, there's just certain things that are, I think, really specific to working with. If you're directly working with a CEO or an extremely high level, C-suite person in a Fortune 500 company, you need to be, it's not uncommon to need to be a little bit arrogant, because you have to combat that ego almost always. But, I'm not usually dealing with that. Probably anybody listening to the show is not dealing with that. So arrogance as a tool is not going to serve you well at all. So playing the diva card is, it's not going to work.
I'd love to know what's on your reading list.
Yeah, I've got a link to it. I'll share it in the show notes. It's expensiveproblem.com/reading list, but we can put it in the show notes.
All right, cool.
That could be my pick.
Chat for Crowdcast as well.
All right,
oh, great books. Wow. I haven't read all of these.
I should update the page with little, like I just said, little blurbs about why I think each one's important.
Yeah. All right, hang on. I've got to mute and run away to take care of a kid. My wife's laying down. She's pregnant and hurting, so I'll be right back.
Should I do a pick? Another pick?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, cool. So we talked earlier about the Double Your Freelancing Conference, and a bunch of people have written really good sort of notes about how it went, kind of like recaps. Matt Inglot on Freelance Transformation did a podcast about this kind of mindset of professional consultants thing. So if you go to freelancetransformation.com, there's the most recent episode is about 3 minutes on that. I think it's pretty interesting. Another thing is, if you go to my conference page for it at expensiveproblem.com/DYFC, expensiveproblem.com/DYFC, there's a link to download my slides and links to some other resources. My talk specifically was about the path to value-based fees. So it was kind of like how hourly billing holds you back and hurts your business, and then how value pricing works, including a little bit of talk about how to write a proposal for value pricing. And then finally had 3 ways to transition from hourly billing to value pricing in a sort of slow way, so that you don't, screw up your whole business in one go. Sometimes I feel like I'm giving people a loaded gun when I talk about value pricing, because it's not something that you can just switch to overnight. It's very difficult to do that. So that's some good information. Also, Kurt Elster and Julie Clute from Just Tell Julie. So kurtelster.com and Julie Clute at justtelljulie.com. They both did good recaps of the conference. Yeah, and there's probably some other, and on each one of their pages, there's a ton of resources to other links. Who else? Kai Davis, kaidavis.com. He did a recap as well that just has tons and tons of notes on each of the talks. So if you can't afford to buy the videos, or you don't have time to consume that much video content, or you don't want to wait until the videos are available, then you can access any one of these pages and get tons of, it's not as good as being there, but you're going to get certainly most, if not all, of the information that was shared at the conference. So if we can't put all those in, I'll try and get all those in the show notes, but you can also tweet me at jonathanstark.com, and I can give you a few of those links if you're interested. Now I'm going to tap dance till Chuck comes back. Let me actually, I can go over to expensiveproblem.com. Trading list. And tell you my top 3 books that I think all freelancers should read. First is The Positioning Manual by Philip Morgan. We've had him on the show before, and the Positioning Manual is just the Bible of, as far as I'm concerned, the Bible of how to position your freelance business to attract crazy amounts of customers. So as he says in the book, the smaller your focus is, the bigger it gets. Focusing down and being a specialist is the most amazing thing you can do for your business. Another excellent book, I'm sure we've talked about it on the show before, is Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port.
We actually had him on the show to talk about the book.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. Yeah, he just released a new thing, and he is crushing it. He just released a new series of materials, books, training classes, podcasts on what's it called? Steal the Show. And it's about how to do amazing public performances. So whether it's a talk at a conference, or a job interview, or whatever else, or a pitch meeting for venture capital, he explains how to, just create a performance instead of just delivering a talk. And he's just, I'm super impressed with this guy. He is great. I assume he was good on the show.
Oh, he was excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make sure that we get a link to that in the show notes as well.
Cool. And then my third one is Value-Based Fees, which we've already talked about at length, but absolutely everybody should read that.
Yep. Yeah, and we've talked several times about value-based pricing, but it just makes a lot of sense, and then everybody gets what they want. So
yeah. I did one of the quotes from my talk that seemed to get a lot of retweets was that, a lot of people, when I tell them how value-based pricing works, they say, oh, but you're just making that up. And I'm like, you just made up your hourly rate, and you just made up that estimate of how many hours it's going to take you. Everybody's just making it up.
yeah,
The difference is when you do value pricing, the client is making up the number instead of you making up the number, and it changes everything.
Yep. I think you spent a few $100s of my money on these books. I own a few of them, but
it's good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well,
when I have new ones, I swap them out.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Well, while I am purchasing the positioning manual, I'll go ahead and throw a few picks out there. One of the picks that I have is Crowdcast. That's what we're using for this Q&A. It's also what we're using for Angular Remote Conf. And anyway, it is super awesome. So I'm really digging it. It's just I really really like it. So anyway, I'm gonna throw that out there. And then I'm also looking at putting up a page with some productized consulting as far as setting up remote conferences for other folks. So if you're interested in that, send me an email, chuck@devchat.tv, and I'll get you some information. I don't have the website up yet, so I'm just kind of putting it out there to see what people are looking at. But anyway, yeah, so those are my picks. I'm also really loving my Pebble time.
Nice. Yep.
So
got mine last week too.
Yeah. I think I mentioned it on the show last time, but I just love the fact that I can just leave my phone somewhere. I mean, I went downstairs to take care of my kids with something or other, and it was really interesting. I was like, oh, okay, well, it kept beeping me. Oh, somebody's trying to reach me on Skype. Oh, this, oh, that. And yeah, it's just, I just love the thing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep. I want to get the Apple Watch and see how it compares at this point. But
Don't.
No.
I have them both.
And what's your opinion now? I want to know.
It's not worth the money. It's just not worth it. Like, it doesn't. Apple. Well, we're going to spawn a whole new show and a bunch of haters, but
that's fine.
It's expensive. It's too expensive. It's beautiful hardware. By far the nicest hardware, no doubt. I'm wearing one right now, as a matter of fact. It's really nice, and it doesn't do. It's not as good as, say, Galaxy Gear or the Samsung Gear Live, which is an Android Wear watch. For any of the actual interactions, all the software stuff, it's just not even close. The OK Google stuff is way better than the Siri stuff. Yes, all the animations are prettier. The haptics are way better on the Apple Watch, so that the sort of tap on the wrist is amazing. But everything's kind of slow. The battery life is atrocious, which is a major problem if you ask me. And it's just really, you hold it up to look at it. I just held it up to look at it, and it didn't come on. The screen's not always on because the battery life's already atrocious. So they try to keep the screen off all the time. So then it doesn't come on when you need it. So then you're like, you're trying to shake your hand, or you have like tap it with your nose because your other hand's full. And the another thing is that it's too nice for me to wear to the gym. I'm not wearing this watch to the gym. I'm not going to get sweaty. I'm not going to go running outside and have like suntan lotion slathered or sunblock slathered all over it. It's a nice watch. So you're not going to use it for a bunch of the fitness stuff that it's supposedly for. I mean, I could go on and on, but the deal breaker for me is the cost to battery life ratio.
Yeah.
It does absolutely nothing that Android Wear doesn't do for half the price better. So I would definitely go, if you're going to get one, I would go with the Asus Zen watch, which is probably the best looking of the Android Wear options, in my opinion, or Pebble Steel, which does far less. Pebble Time Steel, they do far less than either of the smartwatches, but they last for like 7 to 10 days on a single charge.
Yeah.
And they do all of the really key things that you want them to do. The only thing it doesn't do that I wish it did do, and I was hoping it would do it, or maybe it will do it because it does have a microphone, the new one, is that you can't say like I can on my Android watch, say, okay, Google, remind me to send my taxes tomorrow at 3 p.m. And it's really just as easy like that. You don't have to wait. You can just say it just like I just said it. It probably just recorded it on my watch over there. But you can, I'm riding my bike a lot, and being able to just, talk to my watch and set a reminder for myself or set an alarm or a timer is I'm really missing that on the Pebble. I really wish they would add that. So we'll see. It has a microphone, so maybe they can do it.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine why they wouldn't be able to do that, because it's Bluetooth, right? And I have a headset. Come on. I have a headset that's Bluetooth that has a microphone in it. And so I just hit the button, and then you know, and then I
Mhm.
can talk to it. So I don't know why it wouldn't be able to, yeah, to activate the, you know, activate the microphone on my watch, and then,
Mhm.
you know, have some mechanism for, yeah, sending the, you know, Siri do this or whatever.
Right. Oh, that reminds me. Speaking of which, the both Android Wear watches and the Pebble work with any kind of iOS or Android phone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the Apple Watch obviously only works with Apple products. So if so, dear listener, if you have an Android phone, in my humble opinion, your two options are Pebble Time or Pebble Time Steel, and one of the Android Wear watches. And again, I would recommend the Zen watch from Asus. Seen it in person, and I was like, dude, what kind of watch is that? It's so awesome. But my favorite thing in the whole world is when someone comes up to me and asks me if my $100 watch is an Apple Watch, and I say yes, it is. My Apple Watch was like $550, which is a joke. I mean, that's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
So the other question I have, I know this is completely off topic, but that's fine. The other question I have is, so the Asus smartwatch, do you okay Google or do you Hey Siri it?
You okay Google it. So it connects to, you know what? I haven't attached not all of the Android Wear watches are compatible yet with iOS, but there's an Android Wear app for iOS, and the new, I'm almost positive, but you should check. I'm almost positive the new Zen watches do work, are one of the ones that do work. Like all the watches that are going to come out this year for Android Wear are going to be compatible. And there's some weird reason why the older ones aren't, but I can't remember what it was. But yeah, so you would say okay Google still
Okay, so it just, instead of sending off to Siri services, it sends off to Google
to the
services.
Google app on your watch. Yep.
Oh, okay.
So you can use OK Google with Google now. Like there's an app for iOS just called Google that you can use as like it's kind of like Android on your iOS.
Huh.
So if you're a big Gmail person, you use a lot of Google services. Um, Google by far, I think, has the best voice recognition of all of them. So it's amazingly convenient to be able to say, you know, okay, Google, remind me to send my taxes tomorrow at 3. But if it doesn't recognize it, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's my voice or something, but Siri just does not work for me on the watch. It is always doing the wrong thing. Yeah, I say always.
Uh-huh.
It's about 35% of the time it does the wrong thing. And then I'm just like, then I just want to smash it because I have to take up my phone anyway. And, you know, heaven forbid if someone was watching me and I was trying to be cool or trying to demo it for someone, they're like, look how cool this Apple Watch is. And then it fails. And then you're like, I feel like a tool because I just spent $550 on this watch that doesn't work.
Yeah, we did an episode on iFreaks with Neil Ford, and he was giving us a whole bunch of tips for actually training Siri so that he or she gets, because you can switch the voice, right? Um, uh, gets better at um,
Like getting you.
yeah. So basically, what you do is on your phone, after you've told Siri to do something, you tap the screen once, and then you can actually type in what you really said, and then it sends that back, and then, you know, it gets better at recognizing what you're saying.
I mean, that makes sense, but you know,
Yeah, it's
you
got
don't
to
have
be a
to do that
hassle.
with, right. You don't have to do that with, I have great experience with Google. I
Yeah.
text people with it all the time. Just say like, okay, Google, text Erica that I'm going to be home in 5 minutes, and then you see it go blue, 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 and it types it out, and then it gives you like 3 seconds to cancel it if it got it wrong, but it almost never does.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm having minor buyer's remorse now. I mean, I'm still super happy with the Pebble Time Steel, but yeah, the Zen watch, the Asus Zen watch,
Mhm.
is it's $100 less than I spent to back the Kickstarter campaign. And if it works with the iPhone, then
Double check because it's certain models do and certain models don't. Eventually, all the new ones will, but I'm not sure.
yeah.
That one's very new, so
But
yeah.
anyway, I'm really curious. I'm kind of tempted to like buy, you know, a couple of well, at least one of each kind, and then, kind of figure out, okay, how do you make your stuff work on the Apple Watch or the whatever watch? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, just ask me, because I've got like 8 of them hanging right over here on my dresser.
Oh, nice.
I bought them all for a while, and I mean, you don't feel too bad about the Pebble. It's definitely the second best, if not the best.
I'm seriously happy with it. I just, I could have spent less money and gotten the voice feature is the only thing that I'm seeing that.
But you'd have to charge it every single night.
Oh, that's true. And yeah, with the Pebble, I mean, I've been wearing it since, when did I charge it? Thursday or Friday?
Yeah, you never think about it.
And it's like it's halfway. So
yeah, with the Pebble, every once in a while, maybe I'll throw it on the charger while I'm in the shower. If I think of it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I can go on a trip. Like, if I'm traveling, I brought both my, I just went on a 4-day trip, brought my Android watch, because the watches are super useful when you're traveling, smartwatches, because, if you've got like TripIt or something installed, or you're getting updated notifications from your airline. I use United all the time. They've got a pretty good app. And it's just like, boop, right in your wrist, like, oh, gate change to whatever, or boop, you've got an hour to make your connection, or boop, whatever. Flight is on time, or you just landed and you've got, you're at gate this, you need to go to gate that. It's so great having that right on your wrist and not have to keep pulling out your phone. It was great, because I had the Samsung watch, Gear Live, was good, but I forgot to bring the charger, so it was dead after a day and useless. And there's no place to buy a Samsung charger anywhere. So SOL. But on my Pebble time, that lasted the whole trip, no problem. It was still at 50% when I came back, and it had been vibrating like crazy for 5 days.
Yeah. So my take, and then we'll probably wrap up because we've been talking about this for about 10 minutes longer than this call was supposed to go. But my just looking at the watches, I mean, I was just looking at the Apple Watch and the Pebble time. I definitely like the battery life, and it's I guess it's color e-ink is what they use on here, and it's an LCD or something, or LED screen on the Apple Watch, which is why it sucks so much power.
And it's a touchscreen, and the Pebble's not.
Yeah. The thing that I like about the Apple Watch is basically that it seems like a lot more apps are going to be integrating with it than with the Pebble.
But, yeah, that's true.
But the flip side is that I think the most interesting and useful feature of a smartwatch is the notifications, which the Pebble time does just fine. I just had to go and turn it off on my phone. Don't give me notifications about this, because those are the same ones I get on my watch, and I know that on the Apple Watch you can turn them off just for the watch. But the other thing was that I would love to have a fitness tracker in my smartwatch, and that's the other thing that I think the Apple Watch is really interesting for.
Yeah, if you don't mind ruining your $500, $600 watch. That's the problem. Like, I don't get it. I don't know who that watch is for. It's too nice to have all those fitness features in it. Like, other than straight up step tracking, I'm not wearing that thing to the gym. I'm not going swimming with it.
That's true.
So
yeah.
The last thing I'll say to sort of complement the Pebble is that any garden variety web developer can program apps for it, no problem.
Yep.
It's really easy to hack. You can put stuff on it easily with just with JavaScript. And if you want to go nuts, you can write some C code, which looks a lot like JavaScript, although it's a little trickier. But yeah, you can go to I think if you Google for I did an O'Reilly talk about how to build an app for 10 different platforms in 1 hour, and included Pebble as one of the platforms. There's something called pebble.js that people should look for if they're interested in hacking apps into a smartphone. It's pretty sweet. So yeah, it's amazing. Pebble is really cool.
I know this guy that has a JavaScript podcast that might be interested in getting somebody on to talk about that. All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up, since we're completely
off topic and over time.
Off topic, yep. But thanks for the folks who will watch this, and it should be posted on YouTube here as soon as we hang up. So
wild computers.
I know, right?
All right, thanks, Chuck.
Yep. Catch you later.
See ya.
Bye.